Hey guys, welcome to the show. Today, I want to talk about how gay marriage is going. It's been 10 years. This past June, it was the 10th anniversary of the Obergefell decision by the Supreme Court that legalized gay marriage in all 50 states. And I read this interesting article in the Dispatch by Noah Hickey. Noah Hickey is a gay man, and the title of this article is "What Happened to Same-Sex Marriage?" And the subtitle is "A Decade After Obergefell, the most transformative achievement of the LGBTQ movement has been all but erased." And we're going to get into what he means by that. But it's fascinating because I predicted this years ago, before I was a Christian, with my gay friends, who very smart gay friends who we would, when gay marriage, with the subject of gay marriage came up, we would always say, well, why do gays want to get married? It's like the whole point of, because there's so much promiscuity in the gay world, is why would we want to kind of follow the heteronormative, quote unquote, idea of marriage? Like, there's no kind of reason to do that. And of course, the real underlying reason, which we can talk about more, is the idea of, it's a kind of a civil rights. It was really a civil rights movement, and it was really about wanting to belong to a club, but not necessarily wanting to abide by the club rules. And so it was really a red herring. And so we're going to get into this article. It's interesting because, again, this is written by a gay man, and he talks about this very thing, about how promiscuity really has dashed the whole concept of gay marriage. So let me just go through this article. He says that, oh, by the way, he married, I love this. He says, "I married a man who would later become a priest in the Episcopal Church." This is the author of the article. I mean, this is total insanity. But he talks about how on World Pride DC Day in June, that is a Pride Day in the nation's capital, there was no mention of the milestone of gay marriage. And he asked the question, why is that the case? And he said that World Pride DC includes dozens of panels, performances, art installations, and community events representing nearly every imaginable identity and intersection. There are events focused on queer economic justice. Not really sure what that means. Trans housing policy, polyamory. By the way, if you don't know what polyamory is, it's the practice of romantic relationships with more than one partner at a time. Polyamory is very much a part of the gay world, in my experience. And by the way, I just want to preface this whole thing by saying, again, there but for the grace of God go I. We should have nothing but love and compassion for for lack of a better term, the LGBTQ community. We should have nothing but love and compassion for them, because they are lost. They're lost people. We as believers are supposed to be on the Great Commission and leading people to Christ. So I just want to put that out there first. But it says they focus, the events focused on queer economic justice, trans housing policy, polyamory, climate change, inclusive faith traditions. There's no such thing as inclusive faith traditions. Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. The only way to the Father is through me." So there is no inclusion of other faiths. And even an Andy Warhol retrospective. But when he's writing this article, he says there's no official programming dedicated to marriage equality at this event. And so this writer is pretty outraged by that. And he says, why has the most transformative achievement of the LGBTQ movement, an achievement that redefined both the legal status and the cultural perception of our relationships, been all but erased from the very event that purports to celebrate LGBTQ progress? And then he talks about Andrew Sullivan. Andrew Sullivan is a gay man. He's a conservative gay man. He's British. He's British American. I think he lives in New York. And he used to be the editor of the New Republic. He says Andrew Sullivan didn't ask the country to redefine marriage. He asked to be included in it. They made the case that marriage wasn't merely a right to be claimed, but a civilizing institution that could channel human longing into responsibility. So the idea for Andrew Sullivan was that, if gay men are, notoriously promiscuous, bathhouses in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, continuing today, bathhouses, multiple sex partners a night, up to 1,000 sex partners, if not more, in a lifetime. So according to Andrew Sullivan, the idea is gay marriage would kind of domesticate gay men. It would tame them in terms of their libido, in terms of their sex drive. And of course, this did not happen. And so he says, the legal contract was never what mattered most. What mattered was planting cultural guardrails, setting expectations, bestowing dignity, and helping turn longing into love and love into commitment. And again, that idea of commitment is, it's a false idea, because especially for gay men, there is really no commitment in terms of monogamy, in terms of fidelity. There can be commitment in a gay marriage. Two men can be married, quote unquote, but often, after, I don't know, according to Dr. Nicolosi, there was a study of gay men who were married or in a relationship for 5 years, and I think it was like, I don't know how many participants were in it, like 100. And out of all of those participants, exactly 0 were faithful and monogamous. So Andrew Sullivan was the earliest and most prominent advocate for the case for this idea of same-sex marriage as a necessary corrective to the sexually permissive culture that had taken root in parts of the gay community. He had stated plainly that he would not have that we would not have same-sex marriage today if it were not for the devastation of AIDS. And I've talked about this before. AIDS, it's interesting that the AIDS crisis or the AIDS epidemic didn't stop the gay movement. In fact, it did the opposite. It accelerated the gay movement, because as I talk about all the time, in the book After the Ball, the two authors of that book, Mattson and Kirk, these two Harvard guys, they said in the book, this was written in 1989, published in 1990, published in 1989. But they said one of the ways to normalize homosexuality is to make straights feel that gays are victims. And so what happened with the AIDS crisis is it absolutely accelerated the gay movement, because suddenly straight people were becoming allies, and were becoming, they were becoming, quote unquote, empathetic towards gay men with AIDS. And so it goes on to say the conservative case emphasized the traditional values inherent in marriage: monogamy, permanence, and duty. And again, my friends and I, back in the day, we all said there's no such thing as monogamy, permanence, and duty in gay relationships. And so the article goes on to say, and by the way, I just want to read quickly from this book. It was published in 2015, and it's called Making Gay Okay: How Rationalizing Homosexual Behavior is Changing Everything. And it's written by Robert R. Riley. It's a very, very good book. I read this years ago when it first came out, and I was blown away by how astute it was. But he says, I'm going to read a couple quotes from this book. He says, homosexual activist Michelangelo Signorile, author of Queer in America, stresses that for gay men, the term monogamy simply doesn't necessarily mean sexual exclusivity. The term open relationship has, for a great many gay men, come to have one specific definition: a relationship in which the partners have sex on the outside, often put away their resentment and jealousy, and discuss their outside sex with each other or share sex partners. Therefore, Signorile suggests that, quote, rather than being transformed by the institution of marriage, gay men, some of whom have raised the concept of the open relationship to an art form, could simply transform the institution itself, making it more sexually open, even influencing their heterosexual counterparts. Now, again, that was a quote from a gay man. And now I want to quote another gay man, Ronald G. Lee, who describes himself as a refugee from the homosexual insane asylum, wrote that homosexual journalist Andrew Sullivan wants us to believe that legalizing same-sex marriage will domesticate gay men, that all that energy now devoted to building bars and bathhouses will be dedicated to erecting picket fences and two-car garages. What Sullivan refuses to face is that male homosexuals are not promiscuous because of internalized homophobia or laws banning same-sex marriage. Homosexuals are promiscuous because, when given the choice, homosexuals overwhelmingly choose to be promiscuous. And wrecking the fundamental social building block of our civilization, the family, is not going to change that. And again, that was a quote from a gay man from Making Gay Okay, this book, which you should read if you have time. And so this article goes on to say that, and this is kind of repeating what I sort of just said. He says, yet even before Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision, it was an open secret. Again, it was an open secret that many gay male relationships operated under different norms. That's putting it mildly. Norms that placed far less emphasis on sexual exclusivity and far more on personal autonomy. In other words, gay men are very promiscuous. That's what he's trying to say without saying it. Among the couples I know, quote, open relationships are not the exception. They are more often the expectation. Monogamy is treated with suspicion, either as a relic of heterosexual repression or unrealistic constraint on adult desire. So again, this gives more credence to the idea that when my friends and I talked about gay marriage, we're like, gays don't want to get married. Like, that's not a thing. We don't want to do that. And then, again, this was way back when I was living that life. Even Andrew Sullivan would later question the expectation of monogamy in same-sex marriage. So he kind of changed his tune. And it goes on to say, even before Obergefell, many were abandoning the pretense that same-sex couples sought to enter the institution as it was, rather than to remake it. So that was kind of the insidious part, is I think the movement to legalize same-sex marriage was really to remake marriage. I mean, it remade marriage in the eyes of secular culture, not in the eyes of God or the Bible. And it goes on, since Obergefell, interest in alternatives to monogamy has only grown with LGBTQ circles. Proponents argue that monogamy sets up couples for failure, and that not repressing one's desires can actually strengthen relationships. So according to the writer of this article, basically promiscuity within gay marriage strengthens the relationship as opposed to damaging it, which is bizarre and crazy to say, yeah, let's cheat on each other and it'll strengthen our marriage. That'll be great. Let's just have multiple affairs. And by the way, I mean, I have some old friends of mine did get married, gay men. And from everyone I know who did that, they're all more or less open relationships. One in particular is wildly open. The couple kind of has sort of a house rule that, you can go to bathhouses and it's not a big deal. And just, but we're still going to be married. And we have kids, we've adopted kids, but daddy's at a bathhouse tonight. So that's bizarre. The marriage rate among LGBTQ Americans has barely budged since Obergefell. This is kind of surprising. Only 10% of LGBTQ Americans are married today. And again, I think that low number is because people in that community don't want to be married. It was just, again, a ruse to be included and to normalize it even more. So, I mean, once that decision was made in 2015, homosexual behavior was absolutely 100% normalized in the culture. I mean, there was no turning back from that. So now it says, in the article says, marriage is no longer relevant to the ever expanding acronym that makes up the LGBTQIA plus coalition. So the author is saying that this new generation of LGBTQIA plus people, they don't care about marriage. They have much more radical agendas. And we'll get to that in a minute. Well, here it is. Their agenda is deeply shaped by intersectional activism with a focus on racial justice, trans liberation, economic inequality, and resistance to the current administration. Marriage, with its bourgeois focus on domesticity and social conformity, doesn't fit easily in their vision or ideology. It never really did. So this new generation of young people who are trapped in this community, they don't care about monogamy and traditional marriage. They care about social justice, racial justice, trans liberation, economic inequality, like all these radical kind of progressive Marxist ideas. That's their focus. They on, queers for Palestine. Like that's what the focus is. Queers for Palestine. Gay marriage, it means nothing to them. The fact that it was legalized means nothing to them. They don't care about it. And then he goes on in this article to say the irony of the marriage equality battle is that the fiercest opposition to same-sex marriage did not come from the religious right, but from the queer left. For decades, the radical activists within the LGBTQ movement argued that marriage was not a right, but an existential threat, a set of chains wrapped around a community seeking to escape all heteronormative restraints, especially restraints on sexual behavior. So again, this goes back to Rousseau. Rousseau famously said, man is born free, but he is everywhere in chains. And so when this is very Rousseauian, this idea of this new generation of radical activists in the LGBTQ community, they want to throw off the chains of heteronormative, quote unquote, heteronormative restraints. Because according to Rousseau, you're not your authentic self unless you're in the state of nature. So once you enter the society, according to Rousseau, suddenly society's norms and mores, traditional mores, sexual mores, are like a restraint on you. And this is what the new generation of activists want to escape, these heteronormative restraints. So they're all Rousseauians, and they want to they want to live their authentic lives, and live their best life. And then he says this funny thing. I love this sentence in this article. He says, despite the complicated relationship many gay men have with monogamy, he calls it a complicated relationship. It's like, no, it's just gay men are promiscuous. Like, that's the deal. He says, despite the complicated relationship many gay men have with monogamy, deep down, I believe we still want what every human being wants: to fall in love, raise children, and grow up. And gay men raising children is obviously very problematic in so many ways. Not least, I mean, at the very least, I mentioned this last week on the show, Chip and Joanna Gaines having the gay couple on their show. I mistakenly said that their kids, the gay couple's kids, were adopted boys. The two boys, they're actually from IVF, and so they used a surrogate to have their children. And this is so many problems with this. I mean, first of all, the child is ripped from its mother and then suddenly thrown into this completely unhealthy situation with two men raising them. And so that is, and there's many more issues. I mean, when you do IVF, there's many embryos are created, and you oftentimes just throw away the ones that you discard the embryo. So basically I think they had 40 something embryos, and they had discarded all but 2. So basically that's 38 abortions. And, having a mother is kind of a big deal. Like, it's kind of one of the most important factors in a healthy child and a healthy adult a child who grows up. I mean, if a child is ripped from its mother and raised by 2 gay men, I mean, they're going to forever feel that damage and feel that trauma of being taken from their mother. Well, it doesn't go away. That's always going to be in that person's life, that trauma, that major pain. And so the writer of this article blames the Episcopal Church. He says, where was the church? So he's blaming the church for why homosexual marriage isn't really working out. He says, in 2003, the Episcopal Church, the nation's oldest and most established church, elected the first openly gay bishop, Gene Robinson. And he goes on to say, the church helped us to get to the altar, but it did not teach us how to be married once we got there. Now, that's bizarre to blame the Episcopal Church. First of all, the Episcopal Church, I mean, the part of the Episcopal Church is an apostate church. When they are electing an openly gay bishop, I mean, this is obvious. So it's an apostate church. But what's interesting is he says that the Episcopal Church didn't teach them how to be married once they got there. Now, were heterosexual couples since the dawn of time taught how to be married? I mean, I think it just comes naturally to heterosexual couples when you get married to, and you make a vow to another person, and your wife or your husband, you understand those vows, and you try to, at the very least, you try to live up to those vows. So I don't think there is, I mean, there are marriage courses at church, you know, like my church, there are marriage courses, but I think before marriage courses existed, human beings understood how to get married and how to live that out in a covenantal way and how to be faithful. So I think that, to kind of summarize this, I think that after 10 years of this experiment, this kind of awful experiment with gay marriage, we not only are we understanding this, but the gay community is understanding that it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. And it didn't turn out how they wanted it to. And for obvious reasons, because it's not natural. It goes, as Aristotle says, it goes against nature. It's not natural for two men to be married or for two women to be married. And I think Robert Gagnon talks about this, that, you know, there's a moderating influence. So when a man is married to a woman moderates his kind of natural sort of sex drive, and the husband moderates the wife's emotional responses. So that coming together of those two different types of male and female, kind of the rational sort of male and the more sensitive, the more, I don't want to use the word emotional, I don't know, the more sensitive female, when they come together, they're the perfect moderators for one another. And when you have two men come together and get married, or come together and get into a relationship, there's no moderating effect. So all bets are off and all restraints are off. And so you can, you know, do whatever you want, have sex with as many people. I was in 5 serious relationships, and I can tell you that I think in all but one, there was infidelity. So it's just, obviously, I mean, I speak from experience and I know what goes on behind closed doors. And so I think that this whole experiment has failed, and I'm not sure where it goes from here. I don't know if, I mean, Roe v. Wade got overturned. I don't know if gay marriage will be overturned. That's a possibility. I think people are kind of seeing what is really going on and what really, you know, happens in gay marriage. And I think that's a possibility that it will be overturned. So we will see what happens with that. But I wanted to just bring this article to your attention because I just thought, wow, this gay guy who is writing this article really gets it. Like, he gets what's happening with gay marriage. And so I hope that helps you understand more about gay marriage and about that kind of lifestyle. But yeah, it's not working out. But thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.